Welcome to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Circle, the simple and AI-powered rewards and recognition platform for employee engagement.
The world of HR is witnessing a remarkable shift. Emotions and experiences are taking the center stage, and the emphasis is on cultivating kindness and generosity. Hello listeners, welcome to the Vantage Influencers Podcast. I'm your host Sushmita, and today I have with me Anastasiia Khyzhniak, the Human Capital Director at Jooble. In this episode, we'll be talking about HR with heart, putting emotions and experiences first. We'll explore Anastasia's insights, experiences, and the lessons that she has learned all along the way. Anastasiia will be sharing some practical strategies, inspiring anecdotes, and thought-provoking ideas that will empower us all to cultivate a more compassionate and empathetic approach to HR. Let's begin. Hello and welcome, Anastasiia. We are thrilled to have you as a guest on the Vantage Influencers Podcast today. Before we dive into the topic at hand, I would love to give our listeners a better understanding of who you are and the experiences that have led you to where you are today. So could you please take a moment to introduce yourself and share a bit about your personal and professional background?
Yeah, hello. Thank you for having me here. I'm super happy to be here to be able to share my experience with your listeners. So to say in short, currently I'm a Human Capital Director with Jooble. It's an international but with Ukrainian origin company that operates in 69 countries right now.
Wow.
Like we work as a holding, but our biggest product is Jooble aggregation, which allows people to search for jobs quicker, better find jobs from different resources. And we are very proud to help people finding their dream jobs quicker. All in all, wanted to say that I myself, before Jooble, I worked in HR and recruitment for 11 years right now, I think.
Okay.
And usually in tech companies and usually in the international background, worked like with Swedish, French companies. And I see my personal mission as helping companies to build better relationship with their employees and to create healthier conditions for people to work in and continue doing this in Jooble.
Yeah, really interesting journey, Anastasiia, must say. And you have learned and earned so much knowledge all throughout your years of experiences. And we are so happy to have you with us today and super excited to listen from you on our topic. So let's begin then. We have this really interesting topic today, that why HR processes are not about steps and regulations, but about emotions and experiences, right? So Anastasiia, when we talk about HR processes, it encompasses various activities like recruitment, onboarding, performance management, compensation, and so on. So as we delve into the intricacies of HR processes, it's important to acknowledge that sometimes this process can become overly rigid and process focused. So in your experience, Anastasiia, what are some of the potential reasons behind this rigidity, and how do you believe it can impact the overall effectiveness of HR functions within an organization?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. You know, in my experience, like 10 years ago or a little bit more when I started in HR was seen as not as serious profession as some other professions like accounting, finance, you know, where they have specific processes, numbers. HR was dealing with, of course, some regulations, payroll and those kind of things. But all in all, like building HR processes in the organization, it was seen as something very soft, very intangible, and you couldn't see the effects right away of good HR work. So I think, you know, we wanted to overcompensate for it and say, okay, no, we're a serious profession as well. We do processes, we have steps, guidelines, checklists, and it might have gone a little bit too far in that side. So we became very process focused, and sometimes we stopped asking ourselves, like, why do we have this process? Why are we following all of those steps and guidelines?
We forget the motive behind following those processes, and we just follow the processes, right? Yeah, true.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
So sometimes I feel like we want to prove to the world, no, we're a very serious profession. That's why we have this huge people systems.
Mm.
Yeah. But sometimes we forget that people are also not always super rational, or even when we think we are, we still make decisions with our heart and then rationalize and intellectualize them.
True.
So sometimes we forget that people are feeling beings, and everything we do while working with people are about emotions as well.
Hmm. So now shifting our focus to the role of emotions in the workplace. It is an integral part of human nature, and it definitely plays a very significant role in everyone's work, including professional settings where rationality is emphasized most of the times. So how do you believe the inflexible and rigid nature of HR processes can potentially impact the emotional well-being and overall experiences of employees within an organization? And based on your experiences, are there any specific challenges or consequences that can arise due to the lack of acknowledgement or understanding of the role of emotions in the workplace in the context of HR processes?
Yeah, very much. As I said, people are feeling beings, and sometimes we're feeling, I don't know, sad, angry because of something that happens during our working hours. You can, as a person, as a human being, you can feel angry
we
because
are full of emotions. Yeah. We just cannot keep our emotions at the doorstep of our organization and enter our organization, isn't it?
Yeah, and be super, rational and don't feel anything. And emotions could be a very good signal when something is going wrong for you as a person or for you as an employee of an organization. You can feel angry because someone oversteps your personal boundaries. And that's okay. That's a signal that, okay, something is going wrong here. I should raise a topic. I should give feedback. I should talk about it. But when we try to suppress those emotions, or when we as HR try to teach people, that's not place for emotions, we're here to work together and be super rational, then people start suppressing them a lot. But emotions are like a river, and you cannot put a river in a small box and, try to hold it there. Or either you spend a lot of emotions, time, energy on suppressing your emotions, or at one point you still get a sort of a blowout where you cannot hold it any longer. And then we have situations when somebody had a very big angry outburst because the person was suppressing those emotions for such a long time. And then a small detail, a very minor incident can provoke a person into an anger fit. That's what happens when we're trying to tell people that no, work is not a place for emotions. I would rather we actually teach all people who work with us that emotions are okay. Any kind of emotions are okay, and it's very important, not whether we feel them or not, but how we express them in a very ecological, healthy manner. That also respects the other people around you. Basically we can have a lot of conflicts or a lot of bad energy, or people just tired in the company, wearing those masks and not showing their real emotions. Then instead of focusing on work, on building good teams, good team dynamics, people are focused on, okay, I'm not going to show that I'm angry right now, or that this decision makes me sad. I'm not going to show this because I have to be professional.
So in part of the HR leaders, definitely while maintaining this delicate balance between implementing the necessary processes and the regulations, while also addressing the emotional needs of employees, definitely it's a big challenge for many HR leaders, right? So how can they form some effective strategies to integrate the emotional considerations into the processes in a very harmonious approach, maybe?
So, of course, we're talking about HR right now, but I would like to say that, it's also a work of leadership in the organization.
Right,
and HR could lead this work, but if the leaders in the organization, they're also struggling with recognizing their emotions, it could be very hard work for the HR direction.
Yeah.
But all in all, start to recognize not only what kind of processes we want to build as an HR profession, as an HR function in an organization, but also what kind of emotions we would like people to feel, and what kind of emotions we want to invoke in people by doing our work. For example, in Jooble, we recently redid our employee journey. And usually when we talk about employee journey, you imagine something like very concise steps, pre-onboarding, onboarding, then you have integration into the team, then you have performance management, etc., etc. Instead of focusing on specific steps or specific moments in an employee journey, we decided to high level describe what kind of emotions or senses or feelings we want to invoke in people. For example, when we talk about onboarding, what do we want to get? We want people to feel a sense of belonging, from the start. We want them to come to Jooble and say, okay, I see everything that happens. I see how people are treated. I read about your culture, values, etc., etc. I see from how I'm greeted by the team, by all of the professionals in the team, that I belong here, that people welcome me, that they want me to be here, that I'm seen, heard, and all of that. So we try to focus on what kind of feelings we want people to feel in Jooble. And then based on that, we of course go into the processes. Yes, of course, it's still an onboarding process, but every time we design it, and we try to be very flexible, since Jooble is quite a big company and operates in different countries and works with very different contexts. Instead of planning very rigid processes, like one process that fits all of the teams that we have, we try to be super flexible. And we always ask ourselves, okay, if we want to get a sense of belonging in this specific team, how do we do that through the process of onboarding? So we try to be flexible and not over-focus on specific steps, but rather feelings and emotions. And then based on that, we plan the processes.
Yeah.
And it could be extrapolated to any part of the employee journey. So when we talk about performance, for example, it's the feeling of mastery and constant development. We want people to feel that, okay, I'm a professional, I know how to do my work, I feel trusted here, and I also feel that I can constantly grow in the company.
So apparently it's not, when you talk about taking care of the emotions, apparently it's not just about trying to please everyone in the workplace. It is more about fostering in a more healthy mental and overall physical work environment for the employees, isn't it?
Yeah, very true. Sometimes, I hear very different situations or very, very different opinions regarding HR's work. Like in more regulated countries, I hear that HRs are on the side of the company, so I will not come and talk to the HR about my emotions and feelings because they will reprimand me for that, or they will take a side of the company if I'm in a conflict, for example, with a team lead. Or on the other hand, I quite often hear situations where HR specialists, they become sort of a mom or a savior. If you come with any kind of emotion, like I had the conflict with my team lead, then the HR person, the HR specialist is to the rescue. Instead, it's about helping people to feel okay with their emotions, any kind of emotions, and helping to reshape their reaction, how they can cooperate, how they can do something productive with that emotion, how they can express it in a healthy way. Then it's not about pleasing, because sometimes you will not go and resolve somebody's conflict.
Right.
Instead, you will teach them how to do it themselves.
True.
Yeah, and the person might be unhappy with this for a moment because like my conflict is unresolved. Okay,
I wanted a solution from you. Yeah,
exactly. I wanted a resolution, like go deal with it, and you're like, no, I'm not dealing with that, but I can help you to deal with it yourself. I can give you the skill, so the next time it happens, you still can deal with it, and you know how to understand and hear your emotions. So sometimes people will be very pleased with that outcome, but in the long run, you give them tools to work.
This is a challenge, I think, HR professionals that they face while integrating, emotions and experiences into the processes, isn't it? Mostly people are resistant to changes, and they are sometimes overly dependent on the leaders and the HRs.
Yeah, very true. In my own experience, like growing as an HR specialist, HR leader, I love people that I'm working with, like everyone. And sometimes when a person comes to me, like I had a conflict with my colleague and I feel hurt, I want to help. I want to resolve this conflict. I want to sometimes become a savior, but then I hold myself very tightly because if I do it for everybody, it's a big emotional toll for me.
True.
And then instead of helping people to grow, like giving them space to grow emotionally, I take care of them. And it's not a good situation because they would have to deal with those same emotions in their lives or in other workplaces where I'm not there, maybe. Sometimes it might feel like a very harsh decision, like not to resolve somebody's personal situation. But I always remind myself, okay, this person needs to go through this process. They need to get comfortable with expressing anger or sadness or grief or you name it. It's still very difficult for myself, even though I've been in this position for a number of years.
Yeah, so at the same time, when HR has to think about all of this, it is, I think, a duty of the people, of the employees also to think about HR. Like you want HR to be with a heart, but you often forget that HR is a human. So employees also play a big role in considering in making HR's work easier.
True, and sometimes we'll also forget that people's emotions can provoke HR specialists' emotions. Sometimes when a person comes to you to complain or when they're angry at something, you can provoke this emotion for HR specialists. It's also very important to remember to listen to their reactions and emotions that are provoked by a situation and ask themselves, like, is it my emotion or is it just a reaction to other person's emotions? Or am I getting defensive because I'm feeling partially responsible for what the person is going through? So always to work with own experiences, emotional states and all of that. So it's important for HRs also not to forget that we're having the same emotions and it's okay. It's absolutely normal to get angry, get sad because of the situation, but also ask what can I do from this emotion right now?
Yeah. So let's take a closer look at some of the real world examples, maybe. So can you share some HR practices or initiatives that have successfully, placed an emphasis on emotions and experiences that have resulted in positive outcomes for employees and the overall organization?
Yeah. For example, the performance review or feedback sessions. When we talk to the employees regarding how to give healthy feedback, and I'm a supporter of giving non-anonymous feedback, because when you're giving anonymous feedback, it's easier to feel like I'm not going to be responsible for what I say. So I can basically do an emotional dump, especially when it's a written feedback. I can just write whatever. I'm not going to be held responsible. I'm not signing my name under this. And then when you as a person get very emotional feedback and you don't know who it's from and you cannot follow up, you cannot talk about the situation, you're just left with somebody's emotions. What we do, and I usually when I come to any company, like what I did with Jooble, I always say, like, let's do non-anonymous feedback first of all, because yes, of course, we can potentially get less feedback, but then it's always a feedback that the person is really ready to share, ready to discuss, ready to give to another person. And also we teach during the feedback sessions how to give it in a healthy way, not talking about the person like you did this wrong or you're a bad team player or something, but rather talking about it as this situation or what you did in this situation made me feel this way. And instead, it would be better in our contact if you did this and this and that. In this way, we're not talking about another person. We're not judging them. We're talking instead about ourselves, about how we're feeling in a certain situation. And considering the fact that we all come from very different backgrounds, we all had very different previous jobs, and sometimes we're traumatized by specific situations and we're triggered by them. You as a person, you never know what can trigger the others. And when you know that, okay, I'll get feedback for that, if a person is unhappy, is angry, is triggered by something, they will tell me. And I will get this in a feedback, but in a healthy manner. Then I can adjust and I can form healthier working relationships with other people. So that, for example, is a good example. Sorry for that example. Yeah. Yes. So that's a good example of how emotions could be integrated into processes. Yeah.
Brilliant, Anastasiia. Yeah. So as we almost reach the end of this discussion, I would love to hear your personal thoughts and ideas on the importance of emotions and experiences in HR, and what key takeaways or insights would you like to leave our listeners with?
So two important things also to mention is that people feel emotional not only because of our working conditions and what we do inside the company, of what kind of processes we build. And we in Ukraine see it very heavily because of the war. You know, people are feeling all kinds of emotions right now because of the situation that is outside of our control. Or the same can happen if you're, for example, we're seeing a wave of firings in different companies in the US right now. It's also very troubling, and people get worried and they contemplate whether they might be the next one to get fired. So we'll also work not only with the emotion that happen inside the company, but people bring their emotions from the outside situations, from whatever is happening in the market, whatever happening in their lives. So we have to teach leaders, we have to teach ourselves as HRs, we have to teach people as well how to work with those emotions, because as we talked, we cannot just shut them off or ask people not to bring them. You're having a difficult situation in your private life, but don't bring this into work. This is impossible. So we have to be ready to work with any kind of difficult situations that are not provoked by our work, but still give them space to live through those emotions, or give them tools how to work with them better, or how to integrate them into the work. And also one important thing we sometimes discuss in Jooble, you want leaders to model specific behaviors, because then they will be copied by people all over the organization. So basically right now we're talking about then the leaders should be able also to show emotion and be vulnerable, to talk, okay, this makes me sad, or I get triggered here. But then with leaders, you also get that sometimes people are still afraid of the hierarchy of the levels. Okay, maybe only the leaders can feel emotions, but we're refrain from commenting or talking about this. So also thinking about this balance where leaders should express their emotions, but in a way that leaves space for others also to express their emotions, not to run people over with their emotional states. So that's a very delicate balance, and we're trying to find it. And I also want other HR professionals and other organizational leaders to explore this and talk more about this, because you will definitely make mistakes. You will definitely get into some emotionally heated situations. But if you explore this, if you talk about emotions, then at least you will allow people to feel them. You will legitimize the feelings in the workspace, and over time, it will make your workplace better for sure.
Awesome, Anastasiia. Your insights and expertise that you have shared on the topic today are truly invaluable. And I'm sure that our audience would find the conversation to be very informative and engaging. They might want to connect to you, Anastasiia. So what's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, they can reach me out on LinkedIn. Like, you can find me Anastasiia Khyzhniak, or you can find me through Jooble, like my company. I would be happy to connect with professionals who are also thinking about like how to integrate emotions into the workspace. And if you have some interesting ideas or practices, or how you like processes where you combine both, I would be super happy to hear about other inspiring experiences. So do not hesitate to find me and drop me a message if you have something like that in your company.
Brilliant. Once again, Anastasiia, thank you so much for your time and expertise. We truly appreciate it, and we look forward to the possibility of having you on the show again in the future. Best regards to you.
Thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure, and happy to be here.
Thanks for listening to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage HR Influencers Podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and our YouTube channel for new episodes.